If you think Black Lives Matter protest is one of the prime political protests that has ever happened, then you are obviously wrong. In past, there were many instances when the country's legislations have been criticized by the people. We have compiled the list of the biggest protests that have changed the scenario in the entire world. From the police brutality and systemic racism to the anti-corruption and freedom, here is the complete information right in front of you. Welcome to the Ardent Blogger, a channel for all the curiosity lovers who want to know something different every day. Today, we are back with an amazing video. If you have not subscribed to the channel, you are missing out a lot. George Floyd. Black Lives Matter. The protest began in Minneapolis on May 26, 2020. It happened when Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pinned George Floyd, an African-American man, with a knee on his neck for more than 8 minutes. The protests spread rapidly across the nation, with hundreds of thousands of people coming down to the streets against the incidents of police brutality and institutional racism. People's vote. Hundreds of thousands of people came and started protesting near central London to demand a new referendum on whether Britain should remain in the European Union. This happened when the Parliament voted to delay a decision on whether to back the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's revised Brexit withdrawal deal or not. This march was organized by the People's Vote campaign, which is thought to be the biggest protests ever then. Women's March. More than 500,000 people marched on Washington the day after Donald Trump was inaugurated as 45th President of the United States. This protest was in support of women's rights and in opposition to all the misogynistic statements and behavior given out by Trump. This protest saw the enormous international support, with more than 600 marches planned in the country, as well as 81 other countries on the same day. Anti-corruption protests in India. India has been overpowered by the corruption and kleptomaniac behaviors of power since the British colonization. In April 2011, Anna Hazare, a lesser-known anti-corruption activist, began a hunger strike in support of the Citizens' Lokpal Bill legislation that would hold public figures to account. Very quickly, he was joined by over 1.5 million people outside the government buildings in support. Tiananmen Square. More than 1 million people, mostly students who were seeking democratic reform, peacefully occupied Beijing's Tiananmen Square for 7 weeks, until the Chinese military forces rolled in with their tanks to clear them out. However, the numbers are a bit rough, but it is estimated that at least several hundred protesters were killed by the military, drawing harsh criticism from the international community. Iraq War protests. In March 2003, there were millions of people around the world who gathered for anti-war protests leading up to the invasion of Iraq. Although the protests weren't successful, but there were the biggest crowds that have occurred in London when at least 1 million people assembled to be the largest ever political demonstration happened in UK history. Orange Revolution. In late 2004, hundreds of thousands of people came down, flooding the entire Kiev's main square to hold the protests against the results of the Ukrainian presidential election. Demonstrations continued there for almost 12 days until a revote was called, which ultimately reversed the results and had put the opposition candidate in office. Berlin Wall protest. The concrete division, which was put up to separate the East and the West Berlin for 28 years, came down just after the 2 months when the public protests occurred throughout the entire Germany. There was pressure to take down the wall since 1989, and the demonstrations resembled the final breakdown, which helped finally open the gates on November 9th. National Day of Protest. Nelson Mandela and his ANC party organized the anti-apartheid work stoppage in 1950. This was announced in retaliation for a new bill, effectively allowing the government to investigate any political party or organization. On June 26, hundreds of thousands of South Africans participated in the stay-at-home, which was a tactic used several times in the next decade. After it, the people started celebrating June 26 as the National Freedom Day in South Africa until 1994. Salt March. This was just another protest against the British taxation system that had sent Mahatma Gandhi on a 23-day, 240-mile journey to the coast of India to collect his own salt, which was considered illegal under Crown laws. There were more than 60,000 people, including Gandhi himself, were incarcerated for participating in the Salt March, but it ultimately turned the tide of world sympathy towards the Indian society. We are glad you have made till the end. We have handpicked the videos which we recommend you watch next. Feel free to talk to us on our social media channels or on our website, theardentblogger.com, about any recommendations or suggestions.